Kicks off our 2023 CIP budget process, whereby we will hear from the various departments about their capital project requests. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions about their projects. And then following the presentations, we'll take a couple weeks to rank those projects. And then in our subsequent meeting, we'll review the rankings, determine what funding is available, and then we will make a recommendation to the Finance Committee for which projects they should include in next year's budget. And this really is one of the first processes, with the exception of internal departmental budget creation, at least in the preliminary phase. This is really the first public-facing phase of the 2023 budget process, and that process then ends in November with a public hearing and then the ratification of the final budget. So today we kick off. Our first presentation is from the Fire Department. We have Deputy Chief Kopp and Chief Bartek with us this morning. So, gentlemen, we'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Here we are again. Capital improvements 2023. All right. So we've brought a couple of requests this morning, and Leo's also here. Leo Gao, our facilities manager, he's got a couple of requests also related to fire stations that he's written that are on the DPW side. So I'll speak briefly to his in support of his, and he may have comments on ours. So the first one that you've got in your book this morning from the fire department is a land acquisition project for the eventual replacement of the downtown station Central, as it's commonly referred to, at the corner of Grand and Thomas. So that's our main station. I brought this morning, just well-timed, we recently just unearthed a newspaper that I've been passing around this morning from May of 1962, where we welcomed that new piece of facility, or that new piece of infrastructure to our city in 1962. So it's been 60 years that we've occupied that building, and has done very well. I have also brought for you, just came in, our Five Bugles design. The people who helped us with the design and development of new Fire Station 2 on the west side had done a bunch of work circa 2015 in preparation for that. We asked them to come in and do a facilities assessment for us, which they've completed. I just got this yesterday. I have not completely dove through it yet. They're still calling it a draft, asking me to get them back with any revisions or any of the things that I find in there, but I still felt that it needed to come to you today to talk about this eventual project. So where we're at with Central, what's the reality about that station? Well, the reality is that the building is in solid condition. The exterior of the building, the foundations, everything is in good condition. The interior portion of it, the plumbing and electrical, the HVAC systems all have a myriad of problems that either need to have to be completely replaced or heavy remodeling to be done. But the good news is the building's in good shape, and the city made a smart investment in 1962 when they put that station there. Our current time studies put us at the exact location where we need to be. We need to be somewhere on that Grand Avenue corridor, close to the Thomas Street corridor, for our emergency responses in Station 1's jurisdiction. So we're in a really good position. We're a little tight to the intersection on Grand and Thomas. We'd like to be a little bit further away so we're not dumping immediately right into the intersection, but we're really close to where we need to be. So what's maybe some of the other things with that station that are good and bad? Well, the good part is our proximity to the police department. The bad part about that is that we don't have any room for expansion if we wanted to expand that station. All the property to the north is occupied by the police department. We've run out of space. The equipment since 1960 has drastically changed. Our role in the community has drastically changed since 1960. Today, our department is the department to step forward in any emergency that occurs inside our community. Whether it be someone falling in, fishermen falling in the river, and we're deploying with our boat and our cross-strand people to conduct a water rescue. Our busy EMS units, which are now paramedic level. At the time there's a photo there. You'll see a Cadillac. We were talking about that. That was the ambulance driver era in the 1960s, where the firefighters were somehow tasked with transport of sick and injured individuals to the hospital, and they put on the white lab coats. That's what magically converted them from firefighters to ambulance drivers, and they would throw someone in and drive fast. Well, now that's 85% of our business is our EMS division, and we've got 5 ambulances. We run 4 with 3 front lines with a 4th that can be staffed with a cross-staffed configuration out of Station 1. Apparatus over the 60 years has gotten much larger. You know, our 100-foot platform truck, we can't fit into the original old station. That piece of apparatus and the heavy rescue actually sits in those 2 new bays that were added when the police department was connected. So circa that time period, and I'm not sure exactly how that went, but when the police department built their new building 21 years ago, we added those 2 bays, and that allowed us to have the proper garage height, ceiling height, in order to have that larger apparatus in it. So we've grown extremely tight on space. We've got every nook and cranny of that station used, and we're still busting at the seams. The other area that we see it is in the living quarters. So I'll talk about it in a couple different areas there. One is our admin staff. So our admin staff right now, we've got one area, we kind of call it a cubicle farm, I guess is what they call that. We've got 6 individuals working inside of a singular room. Actually 5 to 6 depending on the day. So we've got our prevention division, our training division chief, our administrative assistant, and then we have a firefighter work desk also in that area. Obviously, with that just being one wide open room and 6 desks in there, it's really difficult for those people to get work done. And a lot of times, I mean, it's difficult to even carry a conversation in there. So we're busting at the seams for office space. We lack a training room. We have the kitchen, which is well sized in that station, was well built, and we use the kitchen as the training room, and actually that's the everything room. There's really no private council or a conference room there. When I took over the office from Chief Kajawa, she had a small table in there. I made some rearrangements, got rid of some file cabinets, some furniture, expand a little bit so I can get about 6 people in my office for a meeting, but that's our only real private space to even have a meeting there. We converted one downstairs bathroom into a firefighter office because in 1960 we didn't have computer-driven reports. Now everything we do is computer-driven. We need to have workstations for our firefighters and paramedics to do their reports at. So we took a bathroom that was towards the front of the station and converted that into that's a really tight spaced 3-person workstation. We do have a private office for the battalion chief, and through that CIP that we did a couple of years ago, we were able to put a wall in as part of, we had a large plumbing project at that time that needed to be rectified, and we were able to add a wall and wall off the lieutenant's office. So the lieutenant does have, and the battalion chief do have the ability to close the door and have a closed door meeting with an employee. But we're really lacking a lot of that space. And then it comes to the issue also, and one of the biggest ones we're facing right now is our female firefighters. 1962, we didn't have female firefighters. I don't even know if they were thinking in 1962 we would. Currently, we have 3 female firefighters. I'm happy to say that we had 13 applicants in this most recent process. We've got two female firefighters that have applied for us in that process. So we expect that to expand. We have really no privacy for female firefighters in our station. So the upstairs, how that works, our people work a 24-hour shift, and if they're not on calls in the evening, they're allowed to rest. They're allowed to sleep. We have a large, wide open, it's probably about the size of this council chamber, maybe a little bit smaller, bunk room with just bunks in it. It's just a room filled with beds. There's no privacy between female and male firefighters in that room. There is a bathroom that was upstairs converted to the female firefighters' bathroom. They've got a single toilet, a single lavatory sink, and a single shower in there. And right now we've got all three of our female firefighters assigned to the singular shift because we've got a really great female field training officer, and we wanted to get our female firefighters training with her. They're likely to distribute between the other crews as they move into their future years of their career. But I think that it speaks to the unpreparedness that we are right now inside that station to properly house staff and employ staff. And in a time where workforce development is so difficult for us, recruitment, retention of quality employees, having good facilities is a big part of that. Having Station 2 and that lovely video that we've got out on YouTube is a big draw for firefighters. And that station is a testament to what a modern fire station can be and should be. Private dormitories, good private bathrooms and shower areas for employees to staff. No more big open locker room like we have for the male side. It also lends to the health and safety of our employees. One thing that we didn't even realize that we were going to see when we built that new Fire Station 2 and that modern design was that through the COVID pandemic, and we were facing employees that are working 24-hour shifts together. They're working in a very highly contagious atmosphere as they're caring for COVID sick patients in the field. They are putting themselves at great risk for contracting the pandemic themselves. And what we learned was that we were seeing a lot of employee-to-employee transmissions, but we saw none at Fire Station 2. We saw the most at Fire Station 3, a very small station. If you go there to have a lunch with the firefighters someday, which I encourage you to reach out to them, go down there. They would love to have you someday in for a visit. That's just a small kitchen table where the 4 firefighters gather, and that's where the transmissions were occurring. Very small, tight bunk room there, very small, tight living quarters. No way to separate employees from each other. Central, a little bit larger, but still having that COVID transmission from employee to employee. We're at Station 2 where we had the ability to have them in their private dormitories, large open-air kitchen, modern HVAC systems, modern separated bathrooms that we didn't see any employee-to-employee transitions. So that's one of the benefits that you also see from a modern fire station. I think that we do have the ability with, say, like Station 3 to do some remodeling. That station is well positioned for lasting the city for a number of years, and I've got a second request. I'll talk about that. But it's time for this community to start visiting, start talking about what we do with Central. What are we going to do with that fire station? It was a great piece of investment and infrastructure for this community that can remain to be a great investment and infrastructure for this community to help out the police department. So if we were, and this is not my original plan, this is a plan that was discussed for many, many years and handed to me when I took over as chief from Chief Kajala, is that the best plan is the replacement of the downtown fire station and then allow the police department, who's also run out of space, to occupy, remodel for their own particular use the central fire station for the police department. Allow them to have some indoor parking. They can, remodel the garages. Maybe they determine that it needs a major remodel to meet whatever it is, but the building's there and it's already strategically positioned next to theirs and could be extremely helpful. So we're recommending that we look for a piece of property or we purchase a piece of property for this replacement station. Based on our time studies, based on where we're at, we need to be right where we're at. The problem with where we're at is we're considered downtown and there is very little property within proximity of where we're at that we could squeeze a modern fire station on, except for this flower shop property located at 813 and 815 Floral Lane on the corner of Grand and Floral. It is a vacant piece of property. It's 2.19 acres. It's been sitting vacant since Wausau Floral exited, which was purchased by the current owner at an auction, and they've been sitting that on as an investment. I had reached out earlier this summer about that, or excuse me, earlier this year about that property, made contact with the realtor. Their asking price for that property is $815,000. So how we go about purchasing this property is obviously it's a big piece of investment, right? I think it's probably the most difficult thing about the long term, whether it be a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15-year plan for the replacement of the central is the securement of a piece of property to do it. Because if we don't secure this piece of floral shop property, we're likely to lose that to another investor that maybe put an apartment building or something else there, and now we're going to be forced to look at buying businesses or homes that we would have to raise in order to place a fire station on it. And to find a few acres to do a fire station is not easy. So I'm recommending that you approve or you score high through this process, $815,000 for the purchase of the 2.19 acres located at the intersection of Grand and Floral. Now, I'll tell you that when I heard that number on 2 acres, I had a lot of sticker shock with that. I called Rick Rubo to talk with him about it, and he told me that the fair asking price in that vicinity goes by the square foot, and by the square foot that we should be looking somewhere for a fair price between $7 and $9 a square foot. At $815,000, it comes at $8.67 a square foot. So, and in a hot real estate market like we are right now, it seems that the seller is pricing this reasonably. They've made an investment when they bought this at auction, and have obviously invested a lot of time and years in the eventual sale of that property, which we could look at. I think it's essential for the long-term planning of the replacement of the downtown fire station. I've provided you this facilities assessment report. It will probably summarize what I've talked. I need to dig into it more. We're going to make this document final with them in the next week or two. But I wanted to get you at least this draft version for now. So that's the land acquisition. Ends my presentation on it. Any questions on it?
I have one, and then
Yeah.
Ed has one as well. So your recommendation really is to acquire the land and hold, basically.
Acquire the land, and then we can talk about planning. Once we have a site selected, we can then begin to have maybe 5 Eagles design to start looking at that. How does a fire station fit onto that property? 2.19 acres. Right now, we occupy a little less than an acre. So I'm somewhat optimistic that we can get a modern fire station. It'll probably have to be a 2-story station like we're in now. And most likely we would have emergency apparatus spilling onto Floral Lane and then put a light out on Floral. One of the difficulties we have now is because we're all wide, and as you drive past that, look, just imagine those vehicles that are closest to the intersection of Grand and Thomas. In order to make that left-hand turn, and if there's traffic in that far lane, it makes it very difficult. It makes it difficult also for merging traffic. If we were to say face that station where those bays are going on to Floral, they're taking a right onto Floral to get to Grand, and now we've got an emergency light there. We've got a single entrance point. It increases the safety margin for the community.
So with and I guess not to get too far down
Yeah.
the road into the design, but what is behind that property? I mean, is it empty space? Because ordinarily like with Station 2,
Yep.
you enter in the back and exit out the front. And, Central was originally that way as well, just for the size of the equipment. So
Yep.
is that possible?
So right now on the eastern side of that property, Floral tees into, what's the name of that street, Jeremy? It's another Floral, right?
Floral Lane, I think.
We're Floral Lane, and then there's another. It's like an alley that goes behind a group. I think about 6 or 7 rentals there, and then it goes to Prospect. I think that when you look at that, common sense would tell you that if we were to put a fire station there, at some point the city may say, well, they need to buy that house that is where Floral lines up with, and then emergency apparatus we could continue Floral Lane right to Prospect, and then we could hit that north-south corridor on Prospect, and then go down to, any of our other arteries. Say, like, if we were going to be going to Town Line, we wouldn't even go to Grand Avenue. We would go on to Prospect, south to Town Line, and then pick up that travel route. So there is current road there. Whether it's large enough for fire apparatus, it's tight. Ambulances for sure are tight for fire
Well,
apparatus.
and I guess that's the concern I have, because the part of the struggle we had with Station 2 is that we had a piece of land, and then we had to figure out how to fit a station on it. So I hate to buy something and then realize that it doesn't work. We did with Station 2 a study to figure out where the best site was. And, we don't know that this site is the best site necessarily. I mean, I would imagine with this, if you buy it and you can't use it, you could resell it. The piece we have Station 2 on, we could not, because we acquired it as a remnant and it had to remain for a public purpose. So we were stuck with it once we owned it. So, and what is a couple years ago in CIP, we approved $100,000 for upgrades or at least repairs to Station 1 to give it some extra life until we could get to a point where we could remodel or reconstruct. So what did that money buy?
So the majority of that money went to solve some plumbing issues that we had. We didn't have, so the male bathrooms upstairs, most of them were inoperable. And so that took quite a bit of that. We also bought quite a bit of office furniture to modernize that, which the plan at the time is if and when we ever do move into a new fire station, that office furniture will follow us. I think it was probably in the vicinity, and I hate to throw out numbers, but it was in the $30,000 to $40,000 worth of office furniture even. And the remodeling of the bathroom into the firefighter workstation, which really was essential. We had to have a place for firefighters to work and write reports. That was part of that project. We did the upstairs locker room. needed to be remodeled. We removed the turnout gear storage that was along the corridor next to the kitchen. We can no longer safely store firefighter turnout gear in the living quarters. That needs to be stored separately because of the carcinogens that can let off. That was a really good maneuver. So that if you were to come to Central and say, where does $100,000, show me where it is, and it's pretty much camouflaged. It's behind the walls. It's the plumbing, and it's that infrastructure that was needed to
The
to do
turnout
that.
gear change, though, and the Plima vent system all were put in right away before the 100,000 was approved. So,
Yeah, we do not have a Plimo vent system. They have a Ward no smoke system attached to the trucks. So there's currently no diesel exhaust system in any of the 3 fire stations. It is a apparatus that attaches to the truck's diesel manifold that captures particulate matter. We're in discussions right now it's a national discussion whether that even meets the air quality standards for a modern fire station, but that's where that's at. The removal of the lockers, they were turned into closets along there. So if you were to come in, you'll see that's all done in like cabinet, like they look like they're just closet doors now. So that was a small part of that project. It wasn't a large part of it. It was probably a few $1,000s of that $100,000 project. The bulk of it was the plumbing. The other part of that too was the installation of the Phoenix G2 system, which was a separate
well, that was last year's
CIP. But then there was some pre-work done as far as electrical conduiting and other things like that when they did the original remodel of Central. Or I shouldn't say remodel, but the upgrade of those infrastructure inside there. So there, you're absolutely accurate. We did put some money into that station. We looked at it as a Band-Aid to get us by for a few more years in a near 60-year-old station. I think that it's up for the community's discussion here. What I'm saying is that we're at 60 years old. Are we going to be in there when the station is 70 years old or 75? I don't think it's going to. I know it's not going to meet the community's needs. It doesn't meet our needs today, and so we need to start talking about planning. We have not done a site study, but it's a fairly tight neighborhood around there. It's all residential. This is the only vacant piece of property with no structures on it. So that's why we looked at that.
All right. Ed,
Yeah,
go ahead
that's-
with your question.
That's Lubner Street.
Lubner Street, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Chief, yesterday I had the privilege of driving Floral to the T, turned left, because if you turn right, there's no issue, but if you turn left, you go into basically an alley, and it ends before you can get to Thomas Street. So, and I can tell you, I'm not an expert driver, but I've got enough experience around your vehicles from previous life that I can tell you your larger vehicles, your pumpers and stuff, are not going to turn right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to have to plan to remove that building if you plan on using that particular kind of street. It's, as a T, I kind of thought that it would be a regular modern type of street. And when I turned onto it, I figured out it was more of an alley.
Yep.
So that's a challenge. I would encourage you to look at, as you start through this project, that you get a hold of DPW and you talk to the city engineering and you ask them to do a traffic study, because I can see a lot of issues with the corner of Grand and Thomas, and then you add in Floral for your exit or entrance into traffic flow. There are certain times of the day that's going to turn into a huge nightmare. Not like we have, where you have a very quick, the light changes, everybody stops and gets out of your way. There's going to have to be some road work done. In addition to that, there are long-term plans, and I'm not sure where we're at with those, for the complete redesign of Thomas, the intersection of Thomas and Grand. That's why we bought the Vino Latte some time ago, the property across the street, and we've sat on that property as we've waited
Yeah.
for that.
That's been canceled by the state. that
well,
intersection, so we actually are looking to put a housing at that corner now.
oh, well, I've been gone for a while, so I'm glad to hear that, that we're finally going to put it back into the market someplace. But I would still say you're going to have to get, I can't say, I'm going to suggest to you that you talk with our engineering staff and you get some traffic studies done at various times. I drive that street probably, go to that intersection on any given day, except for a weekend, probably 5 to 7 times a day. And I go between 7:30 and 5:30 PM when I'm doing that. And I can assure you that there are times when you will have nothing but grief to get off on Floral. Now, Floral might be your best way to come in and come into the backside of your station and have your station allowing you to go on to Thomas where you have an intersection and can control that. I'm not an expert, wouldn't do that. Suggest that. I don't know what you can do. But I would say that as you go through this planning process, there are 2 houses, depending on traffic flow, you need to take a look at. There's one at the intersection of Thomas and Grand, and then there's one at the right turn area to turn right off of the Floral T in order to get to Thomas. And, you know, I would hate to see you start down this road and not include that and then have that become a hiccup and hold you.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I'll get a hold of engineering on that, and I don't know what it takes to do a traffic study, and what their specific
They
requirements would be.
Often
but-
we'll do them in-house for local stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I guess the only other question I'd have about Central is, does Central Fire today have the ability to manipulate and control the lights in the intersection? So that, I mean, at one point, I thought when the doors went up that they were able to change those lights to get themselves out of the station.
So we have all of the, yeah, please.
Just because I have, and I don't even think the chief knows this, so I apologize, but I was hired almost 18 years ago, and right after I was hired, Chief Bushberger asked me to remove, we used to have a dispatch center where our lieutenant's office is now. We removed all that wiring, it all came down to the basement, which controlled that light.
Okay.
Which now, traffic is not supposed to turn left to go into Thomas if you're heading south. And then when you're coming west on Thomas, you're not supposed to turn right on red. All those things are broken all the time. As a battalion chief, I've seen 2 rollovers in that intersection now, and things like that. So it is a dangerous intersection, which I think can be remedied by changing some of those things because we can't control the lights anymore. But that was a history there, and that's why those no-turn signals and signs are up, which aren't followed all the time, obviously, but a lot of honking and things like that. So it is a dangerous intersection.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can't control the lights anymore is a
That's a
factor. But that's been
detriment.
going for about 17 years.
Okay. All right, and then your second project is,
Oh, Mike Martin.
oh, Mike, go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I think I should probably say something because this project would be in my district, and I know that there would be, I think, just a couple of things I want to say. Floral Street is nothing more than an improved alleyway. It is pretty narrow. So to relocate the station and that lot would involve upgrades to the street. Now, definitely removing at least one house to get on to Prospect. But I think the bigger issue is that if we start running emergency traffic down Prospect, there's going to be a lot of pushback from the neighborhood. I only live a few blocks away, and I know that when traffic's diverted off of Grand Avenue for a construction project or an accident or something like that, people get up in arms. And if we start seeing trucks, or, fire apparatus running hot down Prospect, I'm gonna hear about it, or somebody's gonna hear about it.
And I think we would be the first ones to raise the alarm, because one of the selling features for Station 2 being where it is and having the exit plan that it has, is that with the old Station 2, they were running hot through the Aspires Hospital neighborhoods.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
we don't want to see that, but, okay, so we can rank that. Oh, Carrie, go ahead.
So I know the price is $815,000 for the land. I'm a Realtor in my other life. That is an interesting property. It doesn't have a lot of value. I mean, it has value for you guys, and it has value maybe for somebody that was going to put an apartment complex, something like that. But there are much better deals, much better, cheaper avenues for somebody to do that kind of stuff versus this property. So it looks like he bought it for $311 back in 2017. I would say that there's probably a lot of wiggle room in that price.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, a lot, like maybe a couple hundred, something
So, okay.
significant.
Yep, and at the time, if that land acquisition, if this scores highly, the negotiating authority would be handed off in closed session, so we don't jeopardize our negotiating position, but good to know that the market, given what it is, may have some flexibility. Your other project is apparatus bay repair at Station 3.
Station 3, sir. So Station 3, located up on Bridge Street, built in, and I realize I'm already at the end of my time here, so I'll try to move quickly through this one. This one is really a bread and butter project for capital improvements. So what we've got here is a station, built in the 80s, still serviceable to our community. The apparatus floor, the concrete floor there has aged, obviously. The salt water is beginning to spall, and what we're having is the drain. So each of the fire apparatuses you back in has got a drain underneath it, so the water doesn't drain towards where the foot traffic is. It drains towards the center of the truck. Those drains have heaved. They're out of alignment. They need to be removed. They need to be remounted in there. We've got bids on that. The concrete is spalling. We don't need to replace the concrete. We feel that, and the contractors have it looked at, feel like we can epoxy seal it to gain a lot of life out of that. We've also have a need at that station for a washer, extractor, and dryer, specifically for turnout gear. So right now, firefighters positioned at that station, post-fire, they are required to wash their turnout gear to remove the carcinogens from them. They have to transport their gear down to Fire Station 1 in order to have it washed. We've written a federal grant for this washer and dryer, which is in the neighborhood of, I think, $25,000. We don't have word on that federal grant yet, so we included it as a part of this project. If we were to get the federal grant, then that money would be removed from it. What they don't do in the federal grant is the plumbing that we would need for the washer dryer and the installation of a proper electrical and whatnot there. While we were at it, the lockers out there are very large plywood lockers. They're not the open metal lockers that allow the ventilation to go through the turnout gear, which is the modern standard for that. So we thought we're going to do a complete remodel of that apparatus floor and return it basically to new. While we're at it, paint the station, paint the ceiling, or paint the walls, paint the ceiling, new epoxy floor, new lockers, washer dryer extracted. The concrete, which is really the driver of this CIP request, concrete drains would be repaired, placed back in where they're not a trip hazard, and properly draining water again to try to prevent further damage. So that's what this project entails. Not cheap in today's construction environment. With the $25,000-ish for the washer dryer, I think we're at about $109,000 we estimate to do that project next year.
Okay.
I'll briefly speak. Leo's also got one underneath his. How we divided it up with Leo doing his is he's doing some exterior requests. I'm doing the interior requests. So I'm going to support Leo's request. He's looked at the roof at Station 3. It needs replacement also. We need to put shingles on roofs on occasionally, so I'm asking you to support that. His other one that he has is related to Central, and that's in the upstairs locker room, there is skylights that are over that in the original design. Those skylights are original to the building, I believe, and they're leaking now. And so he's asking to repair those. So I support both of those projects also. So any questions for me on any of them?
Okay. I don't. Does anyone have questions on the apparatus bay? Okay. And the facilities, I think we're going to probably take that under Public Works. We've got it over an hour for all of the departments within Public Works. So
Yep.
We'll certainly consider those as part of that total. So,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you. Next presentation is Community Development, and we have Randy Pfeiffer with us. Good morning.
Good morning. So I come to you with a unique opportunity that has the opportunity on the west side of the river to be generationally transformative. There are two properties totaling 12.5 acres listed for sale on the west side of the river, known as the MBX properties, that are owned by Marathon Box Corporation. These industrial properties were built out in the 1950s and 60s and are primed for redevelopment for the city into the future. The city has made some significant investments in the River Life District on the east side, and the transformation has breathed new life and energy into that neighborhood and the city as a whole. The future redevelopment of this area has the potential to generate up to and over $100 million of new investment into the city. Beyond the potential financial return on the investment, this purchase and the subsequent future development would remove an incompatible land use from that area currently. The property purchase would serve as a catalyst for future redevelopment projects that would revitalize that west side of the river. We've been doing a lot of work on the east side currently, and this would be an opportunity on that adjoining side on the west. Property acquisition takes time, and with the property currently listed for sale, the city can now make that investment that would serve the city in many years into the future. Obviously, this wouldn't be something that we'd be able to turn around and flip tomorrow, but as everybody knows, the 400 block, the riverfront, River Life area, those projects took a lot of time to find those properties, acquire those properties, and kind of set those projects up for the future. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. There was a flyer, the sales flyer for the properties in the packet. And like I said, happy to answer any questions.
Well, I guess if I put my economic development hat on for a second, we have often lamented the fact that we do not control this site, especially with the development of the trail system. And we also have lamented the incompatible land use. So I guess thank you for bringing this up. Up until recently, it was not available for sale, and it was next to impossible to negotiate with the owner. So this is an opportunity for us. Members, any questions for Randy? Or Mary Ann, did you have a comment about?
Well, I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
say that we have been unsuccessful in securing an easement or any sort of access for the expansion of the River Edge Trail. And that site is very difficult to, put something on. We've looked at, multiple different options to try to get the River Edge Trail there going down towards the bottom of the bank. And the cost for that type of construction is significant. The other thing I would say is, we could fund the purchase through tax increment district number 8, which it is within those boundaries, so that could be the financing source.
Okay, important.
And I guess one other thing to mention, there's some numbers included in here. The same thing that you talked about with the fire department property, that this would be negotiated. They have a price out there currently.
Right.
I think we would start much lower than that as part of the negotiation process.
Right, and we certainly would have those discussions
Yep.
in finance or NED or both about what your negotiating authority, range would be. So,
And just so everybody knows, there's multiple different, we know with development projects, it's not just this is the amount we're going to pay for the land and everything else is free. We have other costs. There's going to be environmental things we need to look into. We're going to have demolition costs for the buildings. But this is kind of that first step in the process.
okay. Yeah, and this is something that, depending on how it scores with the fund source even, it may generate robust debate within the council. I think that we're seeing a mindset within the new council that there's some reluctance to acquire, control, and manage the appropriate use of such. I have an opinion on that, but it's my opinion. So that's just kind of what we're seeing, but I think that this is a valid item to score, because I think if we're going to look at things with an eye toward a 20-year-plus future, I know that in the last 15, many times it's come back to us that we wished we had the ability to either acquire or negotiate with the owner of those parcels. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you for that. Does anyone else have questions for Randy? Okay. If not.
All right, thank you for your time.
Move on to the next presentation. Thank you. Our next presentation is airport, and we have airport manager Shamil with us. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, just a quick overview of how the airport works in case you're not familiar. The beauty of the airport is that the city of Wausau is rarely 100% responsible for its capital improvement project investments, and you'll see that our plan reflects that we pursue as much federal and state funding as possible for our projects to give the citizens of Wausau the most bang for their buck. Most projects are funded 5 cents to 20 cents on the dollar. The projects that you see here and the one that we're pursuing next year is for replacement of the concrete and asphalt apron and also the replacement of runway 5 and 2-3 pavements. Now, just to let you know, Wausau is a very lucky airport in that we have sandy soil at our location, so our pavements last a really long time as long as we maintain them with crack sealing and slurry sealing. So in my tenure here over the last 30 years, we've really pursued that funding from the FAA to maintain our pavements. The problem is we are now finally coming to the end of the lifespan of the pavements. Because of the congressional funding pursuit for infrastructure, we reevaluated what our priorities for capital projects would be and moved most of our pavement projects to within the next couple of years, and confirmed with the FAA that that was a good move, since they felt that the funding would be there. So where we had looked at doing 5 and 2-3, the apron, and 1-3-3-1 reconstruction 2 or 3 years from now, we're now moving that ahead to pursue the funding that's already been put there. In addition to that pavement, that's the time to pursue runway lighting off of the edge of the pavements. And right now, everything is incandescent and therefore uses a lot of energy to do the lighting on the runway. So the plan is to move to LED lighting and replace that during the concrete and asphalt replacement. Future projects, if you look at number 2, which is a project that we're pursuing in 2025. That's T-Hangar 1 through 10 demolition and replacement. This is something that we actually added last year because the T-Hangars 1 through 10 were constructed in 1952, and they have run their useful life. We have attempted to pursue CIP funding to maintain that structure, but that project has consistently ranked low for the last 6 years. So it was decided last year, after we had to do some major repairs on a couple of doors, that it was time to replace that. So that's why that's been moved to 2025. Snow removal vehicle, we've had our tractor for the last 20 years now, so it's time to get a new one. Although we're not having problems with it yet, we don't want to encounter problems because that's a really important piece of equipment to keep operations going in the wintertime. The airport has grown a lot in the last few years, and that's why number 5 on the forecast is a parking lot expansion with solar panel shelter. We have Learn, Build, Fly, who provides education opportunities for youth at our airport. They've built another hangar facility to add to what they do for the public. And when they have meetings, it takes the majority of the parking lot on the east side, which is something that we hadn't accomplished prior to the last 10 years. The other thing is that our pilot services have really expanded in the last few years, and we have a lot of our customers that keep their cars in our parking lot overnight. So it's going to be appropriate to expand that. I think we've already talked about the emergency access road. We're still fighting with the FAA with that, and hopefully by the time we get to do that in 2027, the FAA comes to their senses and sees it the way that we do.
Someday, John, before we both retire, we're going to get that road.
Amen, sister. That's what I'm really working for.
It's been a lot of years.
That's the one thing I want to get done. So, and then the taxiway alpha extension, that's another thing I'd like to argue with the FAA about, because to be honest, I don't want to do that project. I think it's a waste of money. But in order for us to maintain the minimums for our instrument approaches, the current book written by the FAA says we have to do that extension.
Okay. And good that you give us, we maintain a 5-year plan of projects for the airport, but I love the fact that we have alternate funding sources on most of our projects. And, when we look at the total cost of some of these pavement projects, which are very, very expensive, the local share of them is just so tiny. And that's the best part, so.
As a citizen of Wausau and kind of a department head for the city, I feel it's my duty to try to get as much federal funding money come to the city of Wausau. If we're going to pay federal taxes, I want that money spent in Wausau and nowhere else. So I'm constantly on the lookout for that.
Good stuff. Does anyone have questions at all for John about the 3 projects for this year? Anything? Michael, go ahead.
Just to be clear then, for example, the taxiway rehab is 80% FAA funded, so the $1.5 million project would only be $300,000 on our end, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the same with the other two projects?
Well, actually, if you look at 1.5 at 20%, did I get the math wrong?
I think that's, unless I hit the buttons wrong on my
Yeah,
calculator.
1.5. That'd be, what am I doing wrong?
So if you
Yeah,
look at
you're
page
right.
2 of the book, page 2 of the book,
I'm looking at page 7, I
Okay.
guess.
but
Is there-
I did check your math, John, you're correct.
Okay, all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
There's
Yeah.
actually a good little summary in this addendum that
Oh, there
got
we
handed
go.
out
Yeah.
where
thanks.
the
Yeah.
yellow is our
I
share.
see. Yep, 300,000, 400,000, and 37.5. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, what you'll find is, we used to be able to do FAA projects in a one-year period, but over the last 5 years, they've stretched these projects out over 2 and 3 years. So what you're seeing there in 2023 and 2024 is the difference between design and actual construction.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, we will put a pin in the airport projects. And so John used way less of his allotted time. And so we had a break slated for 9:05. So do you guys want to take a quick break, or do we want to bring up the next presentation? Public Works is next. And we had them scheduled for 9:15, but Eric's here. So if we want to go ahead? All right. All right. Okay. So let's see. Yep, so we do have the Public Works Director with us, and we can continue then through and start on those projects. Welcome.
Morning. I do have a handout. So in the packet that you received with the list of projects, they're categorized by division, not necessarily, good morning. Not necessarily by priority. So just for reference, I categorize them as well by priority. Their rankings, critical versus high versus medium, just for a little bit easier reference as we go through. But I think it'd be easiest if we presented them as how they're presented in the book and answer questions on those. So as you see, there's a lot of projects with our facilities themselves. And so first we'll start with Central Fire in the Public Safety Building. Skylight replacement. Leo Gao, over the last year, was hired as our facility maintenance manager, and he has been compiling over the past year projects in each one of our facilities. And so as we get those, we're ranking those, prioritizing those, and determining which ones from a maintenance standpoint and what has been, I guess, delayed as far as maintenance and really what needs to come to the forefront as far as some CIP projects. The skylight replacement on the Central Fire Station building, the skylights, as you can see in the photos, are beyond their design life, and they need to be replaced. They can just be removed and the roof put back together, but I think that with the difference in cost between just removing them and replacing them, it's nice to have natural light into a building. So I would recommend that we would replace those, prevent any future leaks, and prevent any structural damage around those roofs and those skylights as well. Any specific questions on that? It's a pretty straightforward project.
Yeah, it looks like they have a useful life of approximately 10 years. Knowing that we had just talked about land acquisition and an eventual replacement, but, I feel like depending on where we would be at with that process and design and all sorts of things, we may be at least that before we can build a building the size of what they may need, so.
Right, and I do feel like that building, and I think Leo would agree with me, that, that building can be repurposed and reused. And so I think, anything we can do structurally to save it, whether the inside later on needs to be repurposed and
Even if a
renovated.
different department's in
Right,
it?
yes,
Okay,
yep.
makes sense.
And we have been getting a lot of feedback from the police department about their occupancy of their current building and, needing more space. Obviously, the parking lot, they've been having parking lot problems. They're always looking for indoor parking too. So I do think, that facility would likely be repurposed for police. Most likely, that would be its.
Well, and they said it
ultimate-
has good bones, which is helpful,
Right.
so,
Yep.
okay. All right, Carrie?
Hey.
This is kind of dumb, but I feel like every skylight ever doesn't work in our climate because of expanding, contracting. So whether, it's very nice to have the extra light, but do you guys want the extra headaches? Because I know they're supposed to last 10 to 15 years, but
Right. And
skylights in this climate, no good.
yeah, they do, and I think a lot of that has to do too with the quality of skylights that you purchase, and so, you know, and then how the roofing, this is a membrane roof, and so, and how that is put on. I do feel like we would get the design life out of them if we put them in, so that would be the, at least our recommendation moving forward. Yep. Next would be the flat roof replacement over the PD. This is a membrane roof, and, you know, over time, these roofs, the membrane itself begins to shrink and then pulls away from the ballast and then around the corners, and that's usually where the failures occur. This is beyond its design life. I don't know if we've had repairs since you've been here on that, Leo.
We had slight repairs, but everything's starting to pull away from the edges, it's starting to shrink. The rock on top is supposed to keep it down, but the roof is coming so tight, it's starting to pick back up.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Part of what we're doing today, sir, is trying to let the public see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And with the comments you just made, would you mind making them again into the
Sure.
mic so that everybody hears it? Because
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Yep. So it's an older roof that's on it. It's a membrane roof. Over time, the membrane gets tighter and starts to shrink. There's rocks on top of that keep the ballast down and stuff like that. When it starts to pull away from the edges, it's going to start pulling the edges of the walls in, and they'll start wrecking the concrete walls as well as cracking.
Okay.
So I
Right.
think, you know, I think that these are just general maintenance items as we go through with our facilities and as they age, that will continue to come forward on the CIP. The next facility that we're looking at is City Hall. We have concrete veneer repair up on one of the towers on the top of the building. They're actually coming loose. And they are, it is critical that we move forward on those. It's an expensive fix because those will have to be removed. Any repairs underneath and any damage would have to be repaired, and then those concrete veneer pieces, which are extremely heavy, would have to be put back on. So in, you know, this building is it's a beautiful building. It was well-built, you know, but we are starting to see some wear and tear, and we want to make sure that we maintain it properly, so.
And I guess one question that I would have when we talk about concrete around City Hall in general, I mean, we've done a lot of step and
Yep.
sidewalk repair and things. We know that from our discussions in the SISM committee, that we have, from alders and from citizens, received complaints about the aesthetic of the condition of the concrete that is basically the outside facade of this building. You know, in addition to the structural repair of that concrete, is it possible as part of a project like this that could include some type of either power washing, sealing, some type of rehabilitation of some of this, you know, at least public-facing concrete? So the front of the building was the number one complaint. There's an awful lot of staining at the top, the sign out front, you know, whatnot. And you see some of that on the sides as well that are street-facing. Is it possible to, as part of a concrete rehab in general, incorporate that type of work?
Yes, so we definitely wash the concrete and reseal it, but before we do that, we need to get these repairs done.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're just sealing the garbage into it and not really making the repairs. This veneer that's coming loose is on the chimney above third floor. The bricks are approximately a foot thick by 2 feet tall by 3 feet long. So as they're not cheap, they're not light to move. And as water rains and gets in behind it and freezes, it will push it out farther
Yep.
and farther.
I think Leo also, Lisa, to get back to your question, we have gotten costs for actually cleaning the exterior, you know, as part of a project that didn't warrant a CIP request. you
So
know,
it was below 25?
Right, and so we're trying to work within our operating budget and then these larger repair projects.
That's perfect, because if we have savings in some other area
Right.
or surplus that we can repurpose,
Yeah.
I'm good with that,
Yeah.
just knowing that in a couple of recent meetings, it's come up with, some level of emphasis. So
Yes.
if we can achieve that another way, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Okay? Questions about concrete repair, anyone? It's pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory. Mike, go ahead.
Is this, I'm getting this repair here that's pretty much limited to, I get that, yeah, the chimney, the penthouse areas, the rest of the city hall pretty much structurally sound then, or is there?
So the rest of City Hall is pretty sound. There's some tuck pointings that need to be redone in the ceiling, but we do that at the same time we pressure washed it and then resealed it.
Okay.
So this repair is just for the chimney itself, not for the outside concrete.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and then, well, I guess we could jump down since we're talking about concrete. The third one under City Hall, which is the concrete repairs, the steps, the water leaking into the basement. This has been on for multiple years. And I think, just over time, obviously water entering the building and getting in continues to be an issue and a structural issue. And the back steps of City Hall, those are more or less an emergency exit, but, if we did have an emergency, we had to exit people. They're extremely dangerous.
A couple of them look non-existent right now.
Yes, right, yep. So,
Okay,
and then again on City Hall, a little bit more decorative, but yet with the shutters around the windows, they are, beginning to deteriorate, and there are repairs on those that need to be done to maintain those so they do not fail.
would they be aesthetically preserved, though, so that the character of the building remains?
Yes.
The building is historic, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
okay. Anybody have questions on those two things? Okay, if not, we'll continue.
We've also looked at down to Department of Public Works and our Streets Division. On that facility, our garage doors, this would be over multiple years, but we would begin those in 2023 if the committee recommends funding on those. Those large overhead doors, as they begin to have problems and a lot of maintenance, they become safety issues. Sometimes if they come up not square, not vertical, and they get hung up. So then we need people to come in, support them with a forklift, readjust, and that's really just wearing of motors, wearing of cables, wearing of things that need to be replaced. And so we've kind of chosen the most critical ones down there to replace from year to year as we move forward for the next 5 years.
Okay. All right.
We also looked at the roof replacement over at Fire Station 3. So that's a shingled roof. It is reaching the end of its design life. There are tabs that are missing, some repairs that need to be made. If we get strong winds and stuff because they're becoming brittle, we are losing some of those shingles. So that is something that, I think we can continue to repair it as we need for the next couple years, but it definitely needs to be on the list, and you need to be aware that it is going to have to be replaced.
Sure. Okay, good to have that on our radar. Okay,
GIS engineering, Leo, appreciate it. In the past, the city has always had a timeline of 5 years to do its imagery and oblique imagery and planimetrics for our GIS. It seems that our GIS system is being utilized every year more and more intensely. We've worked with IT. We've had to have larger server space because of it. More information is being put in there all the time. Our database is growing every day. And the imagery that we have is used internally by every department. It's heavily used. And then also externally by developers, by residents, just as information on what's being used. And so one of the things that we had looked at, we think it would be money very well spent if we, rather than every 5 years took photos, that we updated those photos every 3 years. And then on the 5 years, we would do the planimetrics as well. So So what we would propose for 2023 is to redo the ortho imagery, to update the photos on the GIS themselves. And that, I believe, is about 55,000. Those would be done and so really any street reconstruction projects that we've had, any development that's gone on, all of that imagery would be updated for the public. It also helps us as we move in with water, sewer, and all the different divisions that Public Works has, keeping an inventory of all of our facilities and assets, replacements, of what we do on an annual basis. At the utility as well as Public Works, we're also over the next few years looking at an asset management system after the ERP system goes online.
Yep.
And that's going to be very intensive as well. But a lot of that will be tied into GIS as well. So I think having that up-to-date information is critical.
So this is basically aerial photography, right?
That's
That we've
correct.
had, because we were doing a multi-year project a couple years ago.
Correct.
That we started, so we would probably be starting with what we had completed first. I mean, was it a 2 or 3 year project to get that done?
That was a 2 or 3 year project, and the reason is because we took the photos, we did the planometrics, we did the
Okay.
obliques, and we did a lot more work. This would just be the photos. So this would just be updating that imagery that everybody sees. So like the mall in 2020 wasn't down, but
Right.
you would see that is down now with the updated imagery, and that's just one example.
Well, and with the stuff that's constructed up on the west side too,
That's
I'm
correct.
sure.
Yeah.
And this mentioned that we could probably partner with Schofield for some savings.
Yes, they are looking at doing this in '23 as well.
Okay.
And then every 5 years, we would still have the larger project that is more somewhere around the $100,000 mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have questions on the imagery? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I guess, I think my question was answered, when Lisa was talking about the difference between the planometrics and the obliques, but, we just got done with a 3-year
Right.
GIS project. So, but this one what's all involved with the planometrics, I guess, versus just the obliques?
Yeah, so the planometrics gives you the horizontal distances, and those are all verified. They use the ortho imagery to do that, but it's a lot more work in the office for the firm to do that. And then also the planometrics, where you can actually take the imagery and see it at a 45, so you can see the face of a building or look down a street and stuff. Those are the other things that we would do every 5 years as necessary.
Okay.
But this would just be the aerial photo, the digital photo that you see.
So the obliques would just be looking straight down?
Yes, that's
Okay, and
correct.
then the planometrics there, where you're getting the angles, so you can really see like the scope of?
Yeah, and
or
we
the-
can actually measure distances accurately.
Okay,
And then the one thing every 5 years that we would look at too is the topography, and seeing if we have to update that. Right now, I think we have 2-foot contours on our mapping, and that gets expensive too. And we look at that every 5 years to determine, do we really need to update that at this time? Yep. So I think every 3 years, if we have updated photos themselves,
Okay.
I think that would really work well.
so then so if we get new photos this year, does that reset our planometrics for another 5 years? Or are we gonna be looking at planometrics 2 years down the road again?
Yeah, we'll be looking at new imagery and planometrics then in another 2 years.
Okay.
Yep. Unless there's a desire just to do that, in 3 years or whatever, but that's what we would propose, every 3 years with photos, and then in 5 years, which would be 2025, we would do the rest.
Do
Yep.
the whole shebang?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Based on the time that we are keeping here, because we're very efficient with these, Mary Ann, did you want to check with the transit director and see if he could appear at 9:30?
It's the only phone number I don't have.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can
Just
call.
so we can kind of keep going. If he can't, we'll take the break then.
He wanted to go early.
Okay.
CCIT wanted to go.
And then the
Oh,
last
Jerry
project.
said he wanted to go early, CCITC?
Okay,
So
as
could
long
ask
as
him.
we can continue, I mean, we'll
Okay.
still do a short break, but just so we don't have a huge gap. And then the facility replacement is your last one, it looks like.
Yes, yep. So, we've been working since 2018 on a planning document, trying to narrow down, right now, we're really trying to narrow down a site location. we've gone through numerous iterations, as you can see in the packet on what we've looked at throughout the city. We brought this to CISM at the last CISM meeting, I believe, Lisa, and
Yep.
the discussion really kind of narrowed down to the West Street site. And we've also had conversations with the Parks Department, the County Parks Department partnering with us on a new site as well. The County Highway Department is moving, but they're moving out over kind of to the west side and potentially outside of the city limits, and Parks would like to be more centrally located. But right now with our discussions with the county that we're looking in the Parks Department is we're waiting on the West Side Master Plan to come in on the redevelopment of those properties and some options for that as well. But based on direction from committees, we're really kind of focusing in on that West Street site. And then also focusing in on our most critical asset, which is the replacement of our fleet maintenance shop.
Yes.
That is the piece that we have right now that is critical, that is not meeting the needs of the city or the citizens and needs to be replaced.
Yep, and so part of the discussion that we also had at CISM, and, I've had a concern for a while. We started to look at this, when we started these discussions, it was about an $8 million building, and we all could
Yep.
kind of live with that cost. We scored it really high. We know that they have this huge need. Anyone that's toured it knows. Then in the Finance Committee, towards the end of last term, and really, I think part of the site selection pinch point came because the original plan was to leave some of the operations at Myron Street and split off the fleet facility. And, then we've got, a couple alders that don't like the site that they wanted. So then we tread down the rabbit hole of, well, what happens if we pick up the entire place and move it somewhere else? And I'm all about dreaming big, but that doubled the price tag of this. And I said in CISM, I don't feel like this needs to be a $16 million project, and we need to get out of the mindset that everything has to leave Myron Street. So if that means that they can leave some of the storage and leave the office and still share space with the wastewater facility like they are, and get the fleet stuff, which is the immediate need and the larger spatial need, get that somewhere. I think we need to focus on that to get the price tag back under control. 16 million is just an awful hard pill to swallow, given everything else that we have going between the water and the wastewater facility, and we've got, an awful lot of things in the hopper. And so, the West Street site and the West Street neighborhood made sense from its location. Whether or not the county will leave that area fast enough to meet the needs of the department is another open question. But I feel like when we go to score this stuff, I don't think that we should allow ourselves to get hung up on the $16 million price tag, because I think that we will be able to figure out a split plan that will bring that price back down. I don't think picking up the entire facility is practical. We wanted to see what that means, and, we looked at 8 different sites, and, some of them had different merit. One of the sites a couple of the sites are prime development properties that could generate tax base for us, and we are not willing to compromise that. So I would love for the discussion to begin again about Cleveland Avenue, and I know it's a whole lot of drama in the council chamber, but it was a good plan, and it was close to the site we already occupy. And, at what point do we allow, one or two people to drive our bus? So.
I agree with that. And, one thought would be is ask the taxpayers, put it out to referendum. Do they think that that property should be reused for city facilities and, forego acquisition costs as a result? I think that, is something that you could ask the taxpayers and, get an answer from a large represented population of the community.
Well, and that we would have to then also undertake a robust public information effort where they understand the two costs and the fact that the cost is basically half, and the fact that there's not a lot of other practical uses for that site, at least today.
Right.
And assuming that there's environmental site closure, which is able to be done, I think in the way we ask the question is going to determine the quality of the answer. And so I think so often when we go to referendum, you put up a question that says, should we do this or that? And then if people don't engage to get beyond a headline or an op-ed, all of a sudden everything is skewed. So I'm all about that. I think that there would be a robust public education effort by a couple against, and I think there would need to be an equally robust factual public information
Yeah.
distribution. But I just think there needs to be a way to get 16 million back closer to 8.
Well, and, we have examples of reusing remediated and polluted properties. Obviously, we have children playing on an old landfill site, soccer. We have people living on the riverfront. So, it can be done.
It can be done. I mean, it sounds like we're on track to excavate a significant portion of a park as well.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not that the fix can't be made, but, I just think the 16 million is a tough pill, especially when we look at, what our borrowing is and what it could be. If we have the ability to get where we need to be and borrow half the money, that is always a win for the taxpayers, so.
And I think, in this project, it's a ways out. It's obviously not going to fit within our current typical capital borrowing. So,
Right.
it's going to be funded differently than the rest of the capital plan.
For sure, for sure. So I think that's an important discussion for us to have as we're ranking, because, sometimes when you see a price tag like that, that influences, how you score it. But I think from a practical standpoint, the spatial struggles at the current facility are only getting worse, and they're worse every year. I mean, it's to a point where they can't staff up to the levels they need because there's nowhere for the people to work.
Right.
Not only are they short on mechanics, but even if you wanted to add a half a dozen mechanics, you can't, because there's there's no place to put them. So, I mean, that then becomes a circular battle,
Right.
because if you had them, you could do so much more work, but you don't have them, so you can't hire. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's cyclical, so. Does anyone have questions about the facility at all? I know we scored it really high the last 2 years. Carrie?
How big an area is needed for the facilities? I forgot from last year. We had a more detailed discussion about this last year, but like what size are we talking about? For
Yeah,
a piece of land or?
I believe what they were recommending for the motor pool was in that 7 acres is kind of what they were really hoping to
Okay.
get for it.
So that there's room to get stuff in and out and turn it around. I mean, the largest vehicles you have obviously are a problem, so.
That's correct. They recommend like a 100-foot apron in front of all the garage doors, so on each side of the building, they need that much area just to turn the large.
Well, if you have to bring fire trucks in and stuff, that's going to
Yes.
be, you'll need every inch of it, so. Okay.
And it was going to have an internal garage and a wash bay. So all of those still take up, square footage.
Right, which really then gets us past 2 deferred CIP requests, because they've been looking for a vehicle wash for like 8 years, just because it's difficult to clean stuff, and then when it rusts out from within, then we end up replacing stuff way sooner, so.
I would also state that, from the previous year, we still have funding available to continue through the planning phase. I would ask that the CIP committee, as you look at this, prioritize it appropriately as you see, because I think that even if it doesn't fall in the normal CIP funding, I think having the weight of your determination on the importance of this would be very important for the council, and it would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think even if it results in special bonding or special borrowing,
Yeah.
the finance committee really does take the recommendation of this body seriously,
Yep.
so. Any other questions on any of the projects or the facility? Okay, if not, we will score that accordingly as well. Thank you for that, Eric.
Yeah, I appreciate
All
your
right.
time this morning. Thank
You bet. So our next presentation actually was scheduled for 10:10. I believe IT is going to be able to go a little sooner than that, though, right? Could we get them at 9:30?
That's what I asked. I
Okay.
didn't get a response yet.
So if we could get them at 9:30, we could do our break now that we had foregone before. Maybe just do a little 10-minute break if anyone wants to go out and get a drink or anything. And so we'll take just a short recess, and then we'll jump to IT.
Are you here, Solomon, to talk about motor pool?
Why don't
Okay.
we, if
Should we
no
do-
one's, yes, why don't we do that? Because
Okay.
motor pool, we don't score because it's self-funded, but I think it's a good idea to talk about motor pool and rolling stock. So
Yeah.
we could put Solomon in the gap. Thank you for being flexible.
Yeah, good morning. So the motor pool this year is a little slightly different than the past couple of years. For the most part, it's all self-funded and stuff, but there is a little extra that's being asked for just because of the mercury study that came through, and we really need to get going on updating a lot of our equipment. The equipment replacement chart that I provided for the CIP committee, you can see that some of the equipment dates all the way back to the 60s. And especially having the short staff that was mentioned before, it's really making it a struggle to keep this equipment going and operating appropriately. So if you guys have any questions for that, that's really the explanation for the extra ask, is we just really need it. Our equipment is old and aging.
That's tiny print.
Yeah, and just for the committees, we had some, over time, of course, Motor Pool has taken on additional responsibilities, police and fire. And, while we incorporated them into the process, we were slow to recover costs for continued operation from those organizations, and so we got ourselves into a situation where we had some big apparatus in the fire department that needed replacing, and we didn't have funds generated through those user fees to recover the cost. So the last 2 years, we have taken basically $1 million of accumulated profits out of the general fund and allocated that to the motor pool to replace 2 engines. And then last year, we bonded $1 million, for a new aerial truck.
Which is being delivered today.
Yes, which is coming today. So that $1 million is going out the door as we speak.
Yeah.
So, we have tried to shore up the fund, but as Solomon mentioned, we had a study by Mercury that pointed out that, we are not replacing our rolling stock quick enough.
Right.
And that is resulting in higher maintenance costs as well as higher fuel costs. And so they really recommended that we change our turnover and replace the fleet more frequently. I've been very busy in ERP, but we will be looking at the financial position of the motor pool again, and making some recommendations later this summer about its financial condition. And as well as you can see by this, we will need additional funding in the 2023 budget to finance all of the turnover that we're proposing.
So in our book, that's where we see the $1.2 million?
Yes.
Yeah.
1,223,000?
Yes.
If we want to just
And that's-
circle that, that's the ranking amount then, right?
Yes.
So-
That is
Okay.
just the amount for just the standard motor
Where's
pool
that?
plan. There is some additional equipment on top of that Dustin was asking
Page
for, but just to continue the
237,
standard
that's
motor pool
38.
equipment replacement plan, it's the additional 1.2.
Got it.
And
Okay, thank
just
you.
to add on top of that as well, as you guys know, everything's going up, and equipment costs have gone up roughly 25% in 1 year. So for what
Well,
I
and
did
now
is
we're
when I went.
outsourcing mechanics, right? So that's coming out
Yeah.
of there too?
Right, well, it's affecting it.
Okay.
But the equipment cost that was generated on one of the sheets that was supplied to you guys is a very realistic, updated number because of the additional cost of equipment.
I think the other thing too, that we're going to be bringing to finance is the discussion, historically, we would always wait until the budget was approved and in place, meaning January 1 hit. And then we would do any competitive bidding for the vehicles to issue a purchase order. With this supply chain delays, last year, I think we got authority to issue the purchase orders early so that they would come during the budget year where the funds were available. And, we're continuing to see that supply chain delays. And so we will be bringing that to finance again to look at purchasing some of the things early.
Place the orders early?
Yes.
Because we know the delivery will be so slow.
That's going to be crucial for us if we can place those orders early, because they're talking, some manufacturers are talking almost 2 years from the point of purchase. Or
Wow.
point of order,
Yeah.
until acceptance.
So we'll need to just adjust, and then we'll just need to put earmarks in the future budgets, because we
Right.
know the bills will be.
Right, because we'll
Coming.
have the encumbrance in place.
So we had normally did not rank motor pool. This year, we're going to rank a motor pool overage. So what amount is that? So when we look at it on our sheet,
It's the 1.2 million,
it is. Okay,
Yep.
so that is the excess.
Yep.
1,223,000.
yeah,
Just
Okay.
for motor pool, yes.
yes.
Yes, okay. And the normal motor pool replacements, we're not ranking those. Those are still basically taking care of themselves.
Yes.
Okay,
And that did include the suggested national increase of 4% for rental rates. We already did mention to department heads that we're going to increase the rental rates by that percentage. And that's on the low end, but we have to do something to increase the income.
right, okay. All right. Does anyone have questions on motor pool at all? Okay,
Okay?
if not, we will
Thank you.
score that as well. Thank you for that presentation.
If you notice on the last two items under that motor pool, number 7 and number 8, those were the two that he mentioned that I was asking for additional funding for you guys to score and see if you'd be willing to do that. What we're looking at is, we're going to be replacing 2 of our tandem axle trucks, and one of those trucks is what we use to haul around our leaf vac. We have one leaf vac that's mounted on a swap loader. So in our replacement plan, our plan is only set up to replace a swap loader unit. And because of wanting to pull that older equipment out of the fleet, and with the amount that we use our tandems, we're really struggling to keep them operational. And so this leaf vac request, I brought some stuff along because I see it, some of these quotes and stuff didn't make it in there. So if you want that, I can give you each a copy of that. But what it is it's a self-propelled leaf truck that our other leaf truck uses 2 diesel engines to perform this operation. This new modern version actually uses the 1 drive engine on the truck, and then it has a transfer case to drive it. So my goal is to basically get rid of our swap loader unit and then go to this self-driven piece of equipment that would be more efficient than what we're currently running. Because a swap loader unit, you have the drive truck that you have to run, and then the swap loader itself has a diesel engine on it.
Do we expect that it will have better reliability? We've had an awful lot of trouble with leaf vacs the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Being a new truck, I mean, that's the problems we have is our swap loader unit and the truck that runs it is extremely old, and so we see tons of downtime trying to repair it. And
Well,
so
it
that
is, right, as soon as they get behind in one neighborhood, the entire schedule is
Correct.
behind, and then the calls are
Correct.
coming for you. So
Yes.
not good, but,
Yep. So
Okay.
my additional ask is basically because I'm wanting to change our current fleet. Right now, we have that swap loader unit. I'd like to make it an actual leaf truck. And so
Okay.
it's going to take some extra funding to be able to replace that.
do we have that separate on the score sheet?
Yeah,
I
where
just
is
want to
that,
look at the.
Dustin?
I want to look and make sure it's
in
on
the
the score
book-
sheet.
235 is on, yeah, it's page 235 where I'm number 7
yeah.
and 8 on there for these 2 items that I'm asking for.
Item 7, the 270?
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Item 7
243.
is the leaf truck, yep.
Yep, so, page 4 on the ranking sheet, so those will get scored separate then?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay, that's all I wanted to make sure that we don't miss those and then not have it where it belongs in the order, so.
Okay. And then the last one is a radio-controlled zero-turn mower. So we have 119 retention ponds in town and several other areas with steep angles that we have to mow and stuff like that. Currently, we use a zero-turn mower, or we will rent a tractor with a long extension arm mower. And what we found is that we did a demo on one of these things, and what it's designed to do is to be able to mow up to a 50-degree angle without tipping over and having to worry about operator safety. It's basically the same type of mower that our guys would normally run, except remove the rider. You put a radio control in his hand, and he can mow those areas. It's also outfitted with a set of tracks. So instead of tires on it, it's got a set of tracks. And it's designed so like in our retention ponds, we have to keep them mowed every year to keep trees growing up and stuff like that. And what it'll do is even the demo we did, they actually drove through areas where there was standing water in the grass, and it doesn't get stuck, and they can mow that whole area. Because currently now, when we use our zero turns, there are times where if it's a little too muddy, they get stuck. We got to call another piece of equipment out, pull them out, get them out of there. So it's something that would really make mowing those areas a lot easier and a lot safer for our crew.
Well, I was going to say, from a workplace safety standpoint, I love that idea. I mean, that's just It's good stuff. Okay, and that also is on our rank sheet, so we'll have that, we'll have a score for that.
Yes, and I did bring some copies because I didn't see just a little kind of picture showing something.
Oh, good, we'll pass those around, and once Dustin gets those
Thanks,
distributed, if anyone has questions for him about those items, you can go ahead and ask them.
Thank you.
Now, if we could only get people to put out things that are only leaves. That's the operative,
Instead of giant rip balls, you mean?
or limbs, entire trees, yeah. So, cinder blocks, yes. I'm sure you guys could write a book about the things you've found. Oh, and this is the lawnmower. I wonder if something like this, do you think something like this could replace hand mowing in certain areas? I think about the contract we have where we've got somebody going out to mow the 52 Parkway around those rocks and whatnot. I mean, in traffic, I mean, is something like this something that can work? Or is it too big?
No, this is actually smaller than our current zero-turn mowers.
Okay.
Just
You
a
know,
little bit
someday
smaller.
will we be able to do it, like if you go to Sam's Club now, the floors get washed by.
Robots?
Robot, yeah. Maybe someday
So
we'll
like
have robot
like Roomba
mowers.
for grass,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
right.
only great
A
big.
Roomba for grass.
Right.
It knows the parcel and it just goes and.
Goes around
Hopefully it goes
obstructions.
around toads, but
And boulders and, yeah.
I guess
Oh,
they
good
can
stuff.
sense vibration though. I stepped on a toad last night, that's why.
Oh, it's horrifying to step on a
I
toad.
know it. It was so gross.
All right, does anyone have questions on any of these items for Dustin? If not, we'll score them, but thank you for the visual aids. It's always
Thank you.
helpful for us to be able to see what we're trying to buy. So, good stuff there. All right, well, we have not got the IT director yet with us, so let's take our quick little 10-minute break that I've promised you now for 15 minutes. We'll take a little quick recess, and then we'll take up with another presentation. Thank you.